We're live, and we have Sam Guidry here with us. Welcome to the interview.
Hey, good to be here.
Great. And let's get straight into it because I'm sure we've got a lot to chat about. Maybe let's get started with how you got started with guitar.
Well, I got started as a young man. I was 18 years old, and didn't know what to do with my life, and ended up at Brian Gallup's guitar school. And it's I remember going in there with my dad to check it out, and we're walking around. I tinkered on guitars, but didn't really know what people did while they were working on them. So I walk into a shop and I see people building guitars, and I had no idea what they're doing. I saw somebody wet sanding. I'm like, why is that guy washing that guitar? I don't know, but it's cool, and just like everything was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. And I was like, yeah, this is it. And then I built my first guitar, and I was like, yeah, this is what I want to do. This is fun. This is cool. And not really knowing it at the time, but it became quite a passionate endeavor for the last 20 plus 22 years.
Mhm. Great. And I guess maybe you could talk us through what you did at Brian's shop and where you're at now.
Well, Brian's shop was best thing that ever happened to me, as far as teaching me the things that I needed to know, not only as a luthier, but like how to do things. Brian was a very tough taskmaster, and he only accepted the best. So everything from the beginning, when I was learning the basic woodworking and getting miters correct and stuff like that, I always had the specter of the highest expectation pushing me, and without that, I don't think I would have achieved nearly what I had or have. And the biggest thing I think with Brian and the opportunity that I had there is, for about 15 years, I had the opportunity to study the acoustics of the acoustic science behind acoustic guitars. And Brian and I ended up creating software and doing consulting and all kinds of, kind of big stuff with it. But ultimately, I learned, I hesitate to say everything because I'm always learning, but I learned more than I ever thought possible about the way that the guitar works. So, fast forward to the pandemic hits, and I had to, figure out what I was going to do because, the world was ending. And so I ended up retreating to my house and starting my shop up in my house, which has been a long and arduous journey. But the benefit is I know exactly what I'm doing and what I'm trying to do, so the time that I spent at Brian's, built me into a real luthier to where, I have luthier power in my hands and in my brain. So I can, there's no problem that I can't solve or I can't think about. And that's where all the value, from working with Brian, having the opportunity to make a few hundred guitars is always a good thing, and actually I'm starting to think about my own apprentice. I had a number of apprentices at Brian's shop, but now I'm ready to have one in my own shop, to kind of be able to pass some of those things along and get the assistance I need. But, it kind of has made me realize that you got to go in and you got to do your time. And I did my time there, and it made me strong.
In the ways of Guthrie.
In the ways of Luthery.
Awesome. And well, you spoke quite a bit about the science of acoustics or acoustic science and sort of software, etc. Maybe you could just talk us through a little bit about your build philosophy, for the want of a better word.
Well, it's interesting. I kind of have two parallel philosophies. One which has to do with how the guitar functions and what it does, and the other is why we're doing it in the first place. As far as my build philosophy goes, I use science and technology to take measurements, and those things help me get to where I need to go. Help me identify the correct piece of wood. It's very common for people to say, this is a 5A piece of spruce, or this is a, moon spruce, or whatever. And that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with what the piece of wood is. How the piece of wood will work is a function of its material properties. And so I measure the material properties of the wood, and then you can truly identify which one is going to be louder, which one's going to be more responsive, or which one's going to have higher headroom. And then I use that type of thing to try to tailor the sound to the individual, within the zone of what I think a guitar should be. And so if you're an engineer, I found that when I talk about it extensively, people start to nod off, because unless you're an engineer or somebody really into it, it gets really nerdy and in the weeds really fast. But I guess I would say on that side, I use science and as much as I can, and try to explain it. Now the other side, and I've really started to get more into this, especially as I've been away in the pandemic. And, I'm sure everybody's gone through some level of introspection and, with the challenges that the pandemic has brought. And one of the things that I've done is, try to understand what it is that I'm actually doing and why I'm doing it. And, because the world's full of guitars, there's no need. All guitar makers could cease making guitars tomorrow, and the world would have plenty of guitars to play, for hundreds of years probably. But that's not really what I'm doing when I'm building a guitar. I'm trying to create something that's special, and that has thought put into it, and it has, not just effort and time, but thought, and you can see that in the instrument. And one thing that I in the age of Instagram Luthery, there's every time I click onto Instagram, I see more and more beautiful guitars. But I find at some point, maybe you're just gilding the lily a little bit, where if a decoration or a style or something doesn't have a deeper meaning, I feel like it's just something that's thrown on there. And so I'm trying to make instruments that mean something to me and will mean something to the end buyer, so that it's more than a guitar, because there's plenty of guitars. And a handmade instrument, should have all those aspects of engineering in it. Just like a fine car is fully engineered to be the best car it can be. It also has styling cues that make sense, and a reason for existing. And that's really what I'm trying to get to. And to go even deeper than that, the building of the guitar is kind of like, for me, a self-discovery process. And almost, I talk with my partner about, it's almost like kung fu. I'm developing my style of kung fu, and there's a practical aspect to it, and then there's a mental and a philosophical aspect to it. And so I do this, and then what ends up happening when I throw all these ingredients in is a special instrument that makes sense with itself, is the end product. And I have improved myself in the journey of making it, and it will go on to help somebody else improve themselves in their journey in playing it.
Right. Thank you for sharing. I guess one of the things I guess we have with guitars is the next one going to be better, right? So most of the time, from most builders, you expect it to get better over time. Sometimes it need not necessarily be the case, but on the whole, it tends to be the case. But I think for most buyers, we at least we always, the grass is always greener, isn't it? You know, I got a 41 D18, but I'm pretty darn sure that 37 is going to sound better. And when I get that 37, you know what? There's a 36, but that one's got a sunburst and it's going to be better. Right? So
well, I think when you get to that point, you're no longer buying for the guitar, because I know I have a number of friends who have those 18s, like the 36 18s, and if they had more dough, sure, they'd have more. But the reason why they bought those, and the reason why I think people buy high-end guitars, is because they're searching. I have one client who owns a couple of my guitars, and he loves them over his other very nice guitars that he also owns. And he still buys guitars because he likes to buy guitars, and he likes whatever it is about buying guitars. But he gets them, and then he calls me and he says, you know, I just got this guitar in, and your guitars are better. And I don't know why I keep buying guitars, because these are better. So I think that there's two sides to that. Like when you get your holy grail, that can be the end. And some people who don't have unlimited resources, you know, that is the end, because they've mortgaged their house to get this thing. But for other people, if they do have the ability to keep collecting, you know, they find that, then they want to find one that's like it, because that represents what the best is to them. But I know that for me, I want one great guitar. That's all I really want. And like, I get to build them and then send them out. So for a couple of weeks, I might have a great guitar, and then it goes away.
And then you've got the next great guitar, right?
Right. But you know, for a lot of people, they just want. I know for me, like, I play fingerstyle guitar now, and I've learned. In the beginning, I forced myself to learn it because I was like, well, if I'm going to make fingerstyle guitars, I need to be able to play fingerstyle to some level of proficiency, so I can at least understand what the thing is. And I've built up my opinion of what it should be. And I know when if a guitar works, then it's good. And if it doesn't, then it's not good. And I know that because I strive for that as the maker, I know people who are the end owners of these instruments are looking for the same thing. And they may not be able to describe it, but they can feel it. And when they touch it and when they hear it, they know that the search is over.
That definitely makes sense. And I guess that brings us nicely to that age-old question of what woods do you like the best?
Well, for top woods, for my sound, and because of the research that I've done, I use wood with a high strength to weight ratio, because that equates to response in volume, in high-end sparkliness to some degree. And for fingerstyle, for my style of fingerstyle, which is a light touch, it's really what I need. And I don't care if that's Engelmann spruce or Sitka spruce or European spruce. They can all have that. Adirondack spruce. But typically woods like Adirondack tend to be a little too dense, are better for flat picking guitars than they are light finger style, I should say. So that's primarily what I use. And then for back and sides, I don't feel, I definitely need to be careful in these statements to not be too definitive, but, Brazilian, it's the king for a reason. It's the most beautiful. It smells the best. In the way that a guitar works, it just kind of I don't think it was chosen for its properties. I think they chose it originally because it was beautiful, figured out how to work it, and then that defined what the guitar kind of would sound like. And I still think that it's the best for that type of tone. You know, when we talk about everything I do with back and sides is based off of Brazilian rosewood. When I look at COCOBOLO, you know, people are like, well, what's the difference? COCOBOLO's, you know, they say it's the same as Brazilian, and it's very close, but it's a little bit denser. So how that works is, you know, I kind of have a lower limit of how thin I will take a piece of wood, and, you know, I build lightly, but I'm not building paper thin. And there's just, you know, about, you know, 2 millimeters, give or take, is about as thin as I would ever want to go with a back, because they can start to get cracky. You know, you get them really super thin. So a back on a Brazilian guitar at 80 will function like it should. And that same COCOBOLO piece may mechanically have the same amount of stiffness at that thickness, but it's going to be heavier. And that's going to have an effect on the tone. And there are ways that you can compensate about it. You know, on the other end of the spectrum, mahoganies and koas, they're roughly the same stiffness as Brazilian rosewood, but they're super, super light compared to Brazilian rosewood. So in my build style, the way that I understand it, the effect of the back has a minimal effect on the tone, as in a lot of ways. But I guess I manage it. So I don't really think of it, you know, back and sides for the most part, I choose for beauty. And then I will manipulate it to do what I need it to do. And I don't really think about it too much. There's not really a back and side wood that I dislike based on how it performs or behaves. You know, maybe like lemon tree wood or something. You know, of the main types of wood that I'm familiar with, you know, the big four or whatever. And once you kind of understand how the instrument works, it all becomes less important as far as the back and sides. But, you know, all that said, a guitar should not only sound beautiful, but it, you know, at the level that we're talking about, it should be visually striking. You know, when you take in the whole thing, it should just, everything about it should be right. And, you know, that's why we, you know, spend the insane amounts of money on the special pieces of wood. You know, going back to what I said earlier, it's, you know, there's plenty of guitars, you know, like you can go to the closest guitar store, find a guitar off the shelf for less than $500, and you probably could play that for the rest of your life on any gig anywhere. But that may not make you happy, you know, and that's really what we're talking about is like, you know, do things make you happy? You know, they say that they don't, but when I play guitar, it's not the guitar that's making me happy. It's the whole thing. It's, you know, the piece that I have. It's that little bit of, you know, those few minutes where the world falls away and you're in the moment. And I think that, you know, all of this sound, look, style, it all plays into that singular experience. And that's really what people are looking for. Even if they don't realize it, you're looking for that, you know, few moments of zen, that all of this gear, all of this stuff that you've accumulated is really just about those few moments of perfection. And Brazilian rosewood always makes me happy. So I love that.
Great. I mean, what do you think, I guess one of the questions is, which kind of wood do you think is the closest match to Brazilian rosewood? Because there are a couple that kind of keep coming up, right?
You know, one that I think people really don't give a lot of credit to is Padauk. Padauk, and when I've measured the material properties of, you know, all the wood. You know, I know what you know, or at least most of the dense woods that we typically use, COCOBOLO, the ebonies, things like that. And Padauk is roughly the same density as like that brick red classic Brazilian. Its damping characteristics are almost identical to that brick red classic Brazilian. The only problem is it's orange. And but I think acoustically I have to do the least to Padauk. Kind of the I do like, I've been using a lot of Malaysian ebony lately, or Malaysian blackwood. I really like that. It's a little bit heavier. Macassar is nice. COCOBOLO, I don't really like to work with it because of its you know, makes your nose bleed and all that. Makes my skin itch, but you know, it's fine. I I think when we're talking about backwoods, the character that makes Brazilian kind of Brazilian-y is that glassiness. It's going to reflect as opposed to absorb those like tinkly high pitch frequencies, whereas your maples or mahoganies might absorb just a little bit of that. So I think if you're in the range and you can get the back tuned properly, it almost doesn't matter. You know, I kind of look at it like this. I have my dense rainforest woods on this side, and then I have the lighter family woods, and those two kind of behave differently. A maple is going to behave in a much different way than a Brazilian or an ebony. And you know, anything that's beautiful, I'll use. If it looks special, it has the potential.
Even that compression called the Koa.
Yeah. Well, you know, what the back does in the overall system is it provides a resonant, another resonance, and how we tune it, how we decide if it's going to be a stiff back or if it's going to be a resonant back. If it's going to be a stiff back, it doesn't matter. The back does not contribute to the sound, so it doesn't really matter. On my guitars, the back is a resonant back, so it does do something. And essentially, the denser the back, the less it contributes. So, and you can kind of hear this when we think about like D18s versus D28s. Like D18s have a bigger sound because the mahogany on them, and I'm talking classic D18s, new ones don't really count. But the classic D18s have a lower resonance, have a lower fundamental resonance than D28s. And the reason is the back is taken to the same thickness as the 18s or 28s, braced the same as the 28s. And because mahogany is a little bit less stiff, it makes the backs less stiff, and it gives the guitar a bigger sound, a bigger, breathier sound. And that's the character of a D18 that everybody is attracted to. And you can actually get that with any wood to a certain degree, but the heavier it is, the less it's going to contribute to that kind of breathy kind of sound or deepness in the tone. Great.
Thank you so much for sharing. I guess we're coming towards the end of our time. Maybe we can wrap up by just asking you, what's next? What's next on the horizon for you?
Well, I'm in my own shop. I'm doing lots of fun things. I'm trying to get to a point where I can make my own tuners. I'm working with a lot of MOKUME GANE, which has been a new path that I've been playing with for the last few years, kind of trying to find new materials to work with. We're always trying to find inspiration that's unique, and that's getting harder and harder. To find something that is you. And I'm really just trying to build pure guitars with a pure intention to get get to that point and, you know, ride the wave out of this pandemic and hopefully get to just traveling again, really missing out on that and that. And,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, just, but this period has been a great time, a great opportunity to, you know, have that period of introspection and, you know, get to where I really needed to be, which was in my own shop, doing my own thing. And, you know, just every day I come out and try to get a little bit further ahead. Cause, you know, I guess ultimately I realized that it's not for me, it's not about cranking out. You know, I don't care how many guitars I crank out. I don't have a number that I need to hit. I just want to make each one special, make it mean something to me, make it mean something to who's going to own it. And just keep moving forward. You know, the pandemic has taught me that life is not work. We have to work to live. I'm fortunate to have the ability to work in my house, so I don't have to put myself at risk that a lot of other people have. So I feel really fortunate in that aspect, and I get to be creative. So all I have to do is, you know, get my mind in the right place to do something that adds to the world. You know, and I guess that's it, because, you know, when the ride's over, it's over. So we do the best we can while we're here and try to spread as much joy and happiness that we can. And that's it.
For sure. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks.